Thanks for watching this week's Newswire, news for Nebraska's farmers and ranchers. I'm Cassie Hobel-Heinrich, Communication Coordinator for Nebraska Farm Bureau. Farmers are venturing into the fields to plant this week, and while most planting decisions have already been made, Nebraska Farm Bureau Senior Economist Jay Rempe says changes between prices of soybeans and corn over the past few weeks may lead some farmers to rethink their planting intentions.
And when you look at the ratio between soybeans and corn prices, it's widened, which means that soybeans are more attractive in terms of returns per net acre. And to demonstrate that, we looked a little bit about at the crop budgets that the UNL puts out earlier this year, looking at examples of the costs of corn and soybeans. And I picked the midpoints of those costs for irrigated and dry land and showed at least an example, looking at today's prices, that soybeans returned a little better versus corn. And unfortunately, when I say returned better, that doesn't mean it was a positive return. It was minimizing the losses. Now, that was on a statewide average cost, statewide average yields, and every farmer, their yields and costs are particular and unique to their operation. So they would need to look at what their expected yields are and what they think prices are going to do and their costs to make up their own.
Over the past several weeks, Rempe has also been tracking the potential impacts to Nebraska agriculture resulting from the COVID-19 outbreak. While his figures are not meant to be an accurate accounting, Rempe instead hopes they offer a sense of magnitude of the impacts to Nebraska.
What's the ongoing changes in the markets and what it potentially might mean in lost revenues for the state of Nebraska. And obviously it gets a bit complicated because you have carryover crop from last year. Ranchers are calving right now, are finishing up their calving. A lot of them won't sell their calves until the fall. And so trying to incorporate that all together is a little difficult. So you got to take these numbers with a little bit of a grain of salt, but nevertheless, it kind of shows a little bit of the magnitude. And so I tried to look at the crop sector, corn and soybeans, and tried to look at carryover from last year and then potential production for this year, and look at the price changes that occurred from January to early April on a cash basis. And with all those assumptions, we could be looking at over $1 billion in potential revenue loss to our crop farmers. And that's just corn and soybeans. That's not grain, sorghum, or other crops that are out there. On the cattle side, if you look at calves or the cattle on feed right now, the calves that are being born right now, and potential losses next fall when they go to sell them, the losses that are occurring right now as people that have backgrounded their calves over the winter are turning and selling them now. So trying to incorporate all that, I used some numbers that the National Cattlemen Beef Association came out on a per head basis and estimated roughly about an $823 million loss to the state's cattle industry this year. And then pork is another one that, if anything, they've seen prices decline even further than corn and cattle. And using some figures from the National Pork Producers Association, or NPPC, they estimated that each hog was going to see about a $37 loss this year, and that's about $124 million. So we're looking anywhere, I would say right now, at a revenue loss within the state of 10 to 15%. And again, that's based on price levels where they're at now compared to what they were earlier in the year. Hopefully, we'll get through this COVID outbreak and we'll start to see the economy return to normal, and maybe by fall and into the year, we'll see those prices a little bit better.
Rempe's estimates do not account for any financial assistance agriculture might receive through the CARES Act, farm program payments, or other financial assistance. And as NEFB Director of National Affairs Jordan Dukes outlines, an additional $19 billion is targeted to farmers and ranchers through the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program.
When you throw out numbers like this, $19 billion, it sounds like a lot of money, and it absolutely is a lot of money. But if you look at the real loss of what the agricultural sector is dealing with almost completely and totally across the board, this money will not make people whole. Now, to get into some specifics, you go to some assumptions that were released as a part of a news release from the chairman of the Senate Ag Appropriations Committee, Mr. Hoven from North Dakota. Now, he detailed a lot more that USDA hasn't necessarily confirmed yet, but here's what Mr. Hoven said. And again, these numbers are all completely subject to change. But the way he has it broken down in that $16 billion of direct payments, $5.1 billion of that would be for cattle producers, $3.9 billion would be for row crops, $2.9 billion for dairy, $1.6 billion for hogs, and $2.1 billion for specialty crops. And that would leave another $500 million with an M, not billion, for other commodity sectors that weren't included up there, aquaculture being one of those. He goes to further detail some payment limits that are going to be included in that. So a payment limit of $125,000 per commodity with a combined limit of $250,000 per entity.
Farm Bureau is hopeful payments will be made soon, but Duke says the USDA must first work through some rules and a process for which producers can sign up.
All of this is subject to change outside of those general numbers. So payment limits and all those types of things, anything outside of those larger end details are subject to change. And we will continue to work to try to provide that information to our members as absolutely fast as we get it. We will disseminate that information out so you all have the information you'll need to know. And we're working directly with FSA. They're going to be the ones that you're going to have to go and talk to most likely. And so as we get into having that information, we're going to work with FSA to get all of that information to you so you know how to sign up and how to make sure you receive those aid payments.
We also want to remind everyone that the Nebraska primary election is coming up on May 12th. But for those who would rather vote from the safety of their home during this pandemic, you must request a mail-in ballot by May 1st. Please note your application to receive a ballot by mail must be physically signed, and you can take a picture or scan of your request and email it to your county election official. Visit the Secretary of State website for complete details. Once again, thanks for watching Newswire, and for more resources to help you during this COVID-19 pandemic, please visit our website at NEFB.org.